Researcher notes.
I want to share a story of mine that happened about 7 or 8 years ago. I was coming home on the bus. I was sitting and looking ahead at the aisle and the backs of the passengers. Suddenly, like a flash, letters appeared above some people's heads. Someone had a B, someone had a C, and so on. The vision lasted only a couple seconds, leaving me in a strange state. I put it down to fatigue, but it happened 3 times, a week apart. The 4th time it happened, I was beginning to suspect it was for a reason. Again, I was riding the bus home, and again I saw letters above some people's heads. There was a man sitting next to me with the letter A glowing above his head. I realized that this was not just a coincidence and decided to find out his name. In the course of the conversation, it turned out that his name was Anatoly. The letters corresponded to the names. Since then, such phenomena have never happened again, but I still remember everything in great detail. The questions remain. Why were only some people able to see the letters and the others? Who were they, these people? And were they people? I can't stop thinking about it, but I'm afraid to tell anyone for fear of being taken for a I used to not understand what happens in these situations either. Being involved in the energy of people and space, I am now more aware of what happens to me. For example, one day, everything around me seemed to freeze. The guys on the bench with bottles, the driver with a passenger in the car, even the dog lying in the middle of the road, which was the reason the car had stopped, was motionless. Under the pretext of helping the dog, I got out of the car, picked up the animal, and carried it to the sidewalk. No one around was moving, like in some cartoon. After examining the dog, I made sure she was healthy. She just couldn't move. Leaving her on the lawn, I hurried home. I was shaking with excitement, but I realized that it was not a simple matrix failure, but a transition to the 4th dimension, and I know who arranged it. Later, I expressed my gratitude to those who helped me in this. When I was about 16 years old, I was sitting in my room at my desk, getting ready to go for a walk. There was a comb on the table, and at some point I reached for it, but it was not there. I was alone at home, and I didn't get up from the table at that time. I ran my hands across the table, then looked under it, but the comb was nowhere to be found. Puzzled, I went out into the hallway and noticed another comb on the shelf, identical to the first one. We had 2 of them. Back at my desk, I put the second comb back in its place, and suddenly my eyes blurred for a split second. When my vision returned, I saw both combs lying next to each other on the table. I felt uneasy. I didn't dare to tell anyone I knew, for fear that I would be considered a fantasist. A strange incident happened in my childhood too. I was home alone, sitting in my room at the table, studying or reading a book. I don't remember exactly. From there, I had a view of the doorway leading to the living room, where our cat was sitting. She just sat there, looking at me and the aquarium. From the living room, a door led to a hallway that I couldn't see. The apartment was silent. Suddenly, a voice came from the corridor. "Kais, Kais, Kais." It sounded very clear and distinct. I froze on the spot, because only I was supposed to be at home. The cat turned its head toward the corridor, stood up and headed that way. How long I sat like that, I don't remember. When I finally plucked up the courage to get up and go out, of course, there was no one in the house. What it was is still a mystery to me. Around 2012 in the winter, around 1:00 in the afternoon, I was standing at a bus stop waiting for my bus. A trolley bus pulled up to me, followed by a bus like a steam train. I looked at the license plate, it wasn't mine. For a second I looked away in the direction of traffic, and when I turned back, the bus was gone. At first I assumed that the bus had decided to overtake the trolley bus, but when I looked through the windows of the trolley bus, I didn't see it there. Then I thought that the bus might have already overtaken the trolley bus, and gone ahead, but realized that it wouldn't have had time to do that in 1 second. I moved closer to the road and looked around the space ahead, but other than a couple of cars, I didn't see any large vehicles. The road was clearly visible from a kilometer away. The strangest thing was that the moment I turned my head and saw that the bus had disappeared, there was a sharp and unpleasant odor in the air, resembling the smell of rotten eggs. There were 5 other people at the bus stop besides me, and all of us simultaneously tried to cover our noses and mouths to avoid breathing in that odor. I was too shy to ask the people at the bus stop if they had noticed the bus disappearing, in case they thought I was crazy. But I definitely remember that the bus was real, as some people at the bus stop were also looking at it when it pulled up. What it was, I still don't know. Indeed, matrix failures have been occurring quite frequently lately. Over the past 30 years, most of my friends, relatives, and colleagues have experienced this phenomenon at least once. An airplane seemingly hovering in the sky is one of the frequent phenomena that I also often observe. The point is that the airplane moves at a certain angle to the observer, creating the illusion of hovering. However, about 15 years ago, I got into the most frightening for me, matrix failure, though I got into such situations earlier and later. But this one was the most frightening. I came on business to a subway station unfamiliar to me. There were a lot of exits, but there were no ground passages. Plus, there was some kind of construction on the surface, and everything was enclosed by fences. I came out of the subway to the surface, realized that I had taken the wrong exit, looked around to see which way to go, made a plan, and went down to the underground passage again. Walking through it, I came to the surface, but I was back in the same place I had been originally. I was surprised, but chalked it up to my topographical helplessness, planned my route again, and went back down into the passage. By the time I reached the surface for the 4th or 5th time, and found myself back in the same place, I was on the verge of hysterics. I changed routes, tried to follow passers-by, but each time I came out in the same place. Finally, I stopped a young man and asked him to walk me to the exit I needed. He, seeing my upset state, agreed, and we walked together. As I climbed the stairs, I looked under my feet, and when I came to the surface, I saw that I was again in the same place, while the young man came out of the exit I needed. I sat down on a bench and burst into tears. I was terribly late for the meeting, because I had been wandering through the crosswalks for about 4 hours. I called the girl I was supposed to meet and explained that I was lost and late. She offered to meet me at the exit where I was stuck. She arrived 15 minutes later, and we went into a cafe in a shopping center near the subway. After about half an hour, we got out and headed to that same ill-fated crosswalk. Oddly enough, this time we successfully made it to the correct exit. The Interstate 10 I-10 highway through the southern United States hides one mysterious place in Texas with a motel and gas station. I've never stopped there on my way to work in Texas. There was no need. But one day I decided to stop there to get gas. I filled up, went into a small convenience store to pay for gas. There was no one inside except the woman behind the cash register. I gave her the money, and she gave me back my change, 11 cents, 2 dimes, a dime, and a... The woman put them in the palm of my left hand, which I held out to her for the money. But I felt something around me. I turned my head to the left, but I didn't see my hand. I didn't see my whole left hand. I looked forward and saw only darkness in front of me, and my forearm with the coins in the palm of my hand. My arm was extended towards me as if I was facing myself, but I could feel the coins in the palm of my hand in front of me, not where my left hand should be. I tried to figure out what was going on. Apparently my frozen posture seemed strange to the woman, and she asked, "Is something?" Her voice brought me back to reality, and I saw everything as it should be again. The woman, my left hand with the coins, and everything. I replied something like, "No, it's fine," and left. I wanted to stop there again, but somehow it didn't. My story happened about 25 years ago. When we were vacationing with my sister, she had already lived in this city with her father for several years, a friend, and our children in another country. In the evening, after putting the 5 children to bed, we decided to go for a walk. Went very far, and on the way back, we got a ride from 2 guys in a big Jeep. My sister and I refused to go, but my friend got into the car and we got in too, so as not to leave her alone. In those days, it was not considered so dangerous, but it was still unsettling. The guys turned out to be sociable and good-natured, offering to show us a beautiful cafe by the sea. We sat down, had a snack, and drove back. The first alarm bell sounded when the driver suddenly drove down a pedestrian path where people were walking. I tensed up and started reciting a prayer. "Guardian angel, come with me, you in front. I behind you." My grandmother neighbor taught me to recite this. Suddenly the song "Natalia, quench my sorrows, Natalia," played. My name is Natasha. I asked the driver to let me stand up and he allowed it. I stood up, feeling the warm sea breeze and enjoying the view of the sea. Suddenly, the thought arose in my head, "Sit down." I obeyed my intuition, sat down, and in the same second, everything went dark. There was silence, and I felt smoke in the car. I yelled for everyone to get out because the car was going up in smoke, and I could barely push everyone out. Everyone was unconscious. We got out of the car and backed away from it, and I saw the big tree we had hit. There was a little turn, but we didn't even make the turn. We drove right into the tree. I looked at the road we were on and saw people standing in a row across the road. They were standing so sad, with their heads down and looking at us. I remember there was a woman and a young guy among them, but I didn't remember the rest of the faces. I turned around and told my sister that there was no one around. Looked again, and indeed the road was empty. The thought flashed through my mind that they were spirits because their faces were gray and their clothes were new. Our new friends quickly called us a cab and sent us home. I was the least hurt in the accident, with only bumps on my forehead and the back of my head. As a child, when I was about 13, 14 years old, I had an unusual experience. My godmother and I were sitting at home, and suddenly we saw an old man approaching our house. He entered the house barefoot, dressed in a canvas shirt girt with a rope, with pants that were pulled high on his hips, and barefoot. He had a stick on his shoulder and a knot hanging from it. His eyes were bright blue, and he was breathing heavily. The godmother asked him, "You must have gotten the wrong place?" The old man replied, "No, I got there." He added that he still needed a little more time to go on and pointed in the direction with his hand. Then he turned around and silently walked away into the hay. My godmother and I went to the window, but the old man was not there. We opened the hallway, but there was no one there. What was it? The neighbor who was next door was gardening, and my godmother asked her if she had seen anyone. The neighbor just shrugged her shoulders, saying no one had passed by. I decided to pick a movie for tonight and wanted to watch something in the horror genre. The movie I found was called Mom. I thought it was the kind of movie where 2 girls survive in the woods and so on. Started watching it, but realized it wasn't the movie that starred Lawrence from the Hunger Games. I watched it. The movie did not make a strong impression on me. I wanted something more scary, but it failed to scare me. And what a surprise when 8 months later I saw a commercial for the movie. A new movie with Jennifer Lawrence is released. I was shocked. Went to the online movie theater where I had watched it before, but in the history of viewing it was not there, and in general there was no record of such a movie. I didn't go to the theater, but my friend visited it and told me about the plot as she remembered it. It all matched what I had memorized. But how can that be? It's completely absurd.